It's time for a revolution in early education. Over the past 20 years, early educators have been pushed to move away from what we know is best practice based on child development knowledge. Instead, a focus on school readiness pressures you to replace child-led, play-based learning with worksheets and standardized lessons, which stifle children's creativity and make educators' jobs harder. This is why, according to ECE consultant and author Rae Pica, we need a revolution. It's a revolution to give educators the respect and resources they need to do their jobs best, to give children a more nourishing start to life, and to set the childcare sector on a better path forward. Rae's been a leading voice in early childhood education for over 40 years, and she's worked with groups like Head Start, Sesame Street, the CDC, and Blue's Clues. And in her new book, Spark a Revolution in Early Education, Speaking Up for Ourselves and the Children, she explores what's causing these pressures on childcare and how we can do better in the future. I caught up with Rae to talk about her book and about what you can do to make this revolution happen. It's all here in this family interview. Rae's book focuses on 4 core myths in early education and why getting rid of them will set educators, children, and parents in a better direction. In her own words, here's Rae with myth number 1.
The first one is earlier is better. I'm not quite sure how that grabbed hold of our society, but it certainly has, where parents especially and now policymakers who don't know a thing about young children are convinced that they have to get their children a head start, a jump start on academics. And actually, in terms of education, I do know where it started because back in the 1980s, 86 maybe, I don't know, there was a report released called A Nation at Risk, and it turned out to falsely show that the U.S. was behind other developed nations in education. And so everybody went crazy, no child left behind, race to the top. The idea that education is a race makes my stomach churn. So that's how it started in education. I'm not sure how the earlier is better myth began with parents, but it has definitely taken hold.
Myth number 2, children learn best when they're sitting quietly.
Another myth is that sitting equals learning. And that one I understand because most of us grew up, went to school where sitting was what we did. That's how we learned. But they didn't have the research back then to show how children actually learn, how the brain actually learns. Now we know that we need to engage more senses. We know that, that children need to learn actively and not through their bottoms, more senses besides just the eyes and the ears.
Myth number 3, we need to give children digital devices to optimize their learning.
We believe that digital devices are necessary to learning in these days because, everybody's enamored with the bright colors and blinking lights and millions of bits of information that computers provide. But again, it's 2-dimensional learning, not 3-dimensional. It involves only sight, maybe sometimes, hearing as well. But building a block tower using a mouse and a screen is not the same for a child as building it with her or his hands.
Myth number 4, that children's unstructured play is a waste of time.
The belief and all of this they all sort of lead into one another and feed on one another. The belief that play time is not productive time. That has meant that children and the sitting is not, sitting equals learning thing means that children are getting more direct instruction, having to do worksheets and look at flashcards. And so, yes, it goes against the grain of anyone who understands child development and the true needs of young children.
Taken as a whole, these four myths make up what Rae and many other early educators see as a concerning trend in early childhood. As she and I discussed, these myths move us away from open-ended, creative, child-led learning and push us toward a narrower, more standardized approach to early education. And that, Rae says, stifles children's natural creative thinking and suppresses a lot of their talents.
Think of all the lost potential through the years when that happens. I mean, what about the child who's really good with her hands, or, the child who excels in cooking, or, any of these other things, the creative arts? So much lost potential.
Yeah.
And then creativity is linked to problem solving. And those aren't going away. Problems aren't going away as long as there are humans around. And we need problem solving and creativity in medicine, science, technology, industry, life. And we just squash the heck out of it.
But children aren't the only ones feeling the consequence of this. As Rae explains, these four myths are also contributing to the recruitment and retention crisis that we're seeing in early education. In other words, these trends are making educators' jobs harder and less rewarding, and they contribute to pushing talented professionals out of the field.
They know what they're doing in early childhood education. They know young children, and decisions are coming at them from on high, made by people who don't know young children in early childhood education. And that lack of respect is enormously frustrating. But mostly they just can't stand what they're being forced to do to the children. And those who can't leave, who just don't have any choice, are burning out because it's just exhausting.
These challenges, Rae says, demand a revolution. We've tried smaller solutions, and it won't do to just raise prices on parents again.
The parents can't afford more in terms of childcare. They just are already paying far too much. And still, despite how much it costs them, the early childhood professionals are not being paid what they're worth. So there has to be some government support there. There just has to be. There's no other way around it. I'm certainly no policy expert. If I were queen of the world and I could wave my magic wand, I would have them all respect what teachers in general are doing, but certainly what early childhood professionals are doing, and let them do it. Just let them do it. It just starts with education, and it's not going to happen overnight. I mean, that is for sure. But I think that there are enough of us clamoring now. A colleague several years ago said to me, for too long, teachers have been told to be quiet and, shut up and do their jobs. And for too long, they've complied. And I think that may be especially true of early childhood people because, they're the huggers and the lovers, and they went into the field because they love the little ones. And it's a whole other kind of mindset. They don't see themselves as warriors willing to do battle with the forces of evil, and some might hear the word revolution in the title of my book and think that I'm expecting them to, go jump on their horses and charge down the streets waving their sabers or even testify before Congress. As I like to tell them, a revolution can be quiet too. And it takes little steps, a lot of little steps, though. We need the numbers.
To make all of this more concrete, Rae says that we can start by connecting more closely with parents and helping them see all of the hard work and knowledge that goes into every day in early education. And once we've got the parents on board, their votes will help shape the policies that will guarantee a brighter future for early education.
If we step back to the parents for a moment, and I think that they may be even more important than the policymakers, because eventually it impacts the policy because they are voters and the politicians want to please their constituents. But we step back to the parents. who in this country have almost put the play-based early learning environments out of business because of their belief in earlier is better. So they are looking for and demanding academics-oriented early learning centers. So we help them to understand the importance of play, and that earlier is not better, and in fact can be harmful. And we do that in myriad ways. No matter what kind of center you're in, you can share articles with parents. You can send out a weekly email or a newsletter, and yes, those take some time and energy, but think about, you're too young, before there were the electronic opportunities to do that, when it had to be done like with mimeograph machines. Do you even know what that is?
No, I don't. You caught me.
Just
I always get a pleasure out of people being like, "You're too young," and I'm like, "Actually, I know that, but that I don't know what a mimeograph is." You get this one.
Yeah, well, yeah. Never mind. It was a copying machine before Xerox, it came along, but everything had to be done by hand. So, sharing tidbits about play. I mean, if you want to step back even further, if you are a childcare owner, and you probably have a website, because otherwise, how do people find you? That website should share your philosophy on play and active learning and why you're doing that. You can do it in words, you can do it in pictures and videos, and showing children engaged in playful, joyful learning. And then hopefully the parents won't come to you demanding, the academics oriented ones. But if enough of us are doing that, it's going to make a difference.
Sharing those words and pictures and videos with parents is easier than you might think. Apps like Family give you the tools to do just that, making these communications a seamless and simple part of your everyday work.
And there are dozens of apps right now for parent school communication. It makes it easier than it ever was. And little articles can be attached, and photos and videos and explanations of what the children are learning. A quote from someone like the Einstein one where he says, play is the highest form of research. I mean, who's going to argue with Einstein? It's important to have those outside sources too, so that parents don't think it's just your idea.
But Rae also clarifies that this revolution is bigger than those resources. It's also about how you think of yourself and speak of yourself to others as an early educator.
I think of a lot of different things as coming under the heading of advocacy. Using our words, we say childcare instead of daycare. Someone asks what we do, we don't say, I'm just, a preschool teacher. We're not just anything. We tell our stories so that people do know. It's amazing the number of people who think that they know what it takes to be a teacher just because they went to school themselves.
Changing early education won't be easy, and it won't happen overnight. So I asked Rae, when she talks about this revolution and looks at the road ahead, what gives her hope?
What gives me hope is that it seems like there are more of us who are, as they said in some movie, mad as hell, and we're not going to take it anymore. And we're willing to do the work. What gives me hope is that I just started a membership program based on the book. And, just to take it beyond what the book offers and to take action steps and to be part of a community and all of that. And I've got 20 people already signed up. So that gives me hope that there are people who are willing to do the work.
If you'd like to learn more about Rae and her work, you can visit her at her website at www.raepica.com. And if you'd like some terrific free resources to share with parents to help them understand your work and why play-based learning in early childhood is so important, you can find plenty of those over on the Family Early Years blog. Thanks for watching. As always, for Family, I'm Aaron Hathaway.